So remember how I did that video talking about how KDE Plasma's edit mode needs a major UX upgrade? And some people in the comments said, oh, it's fine, you're just bad at using it. Use it more and you'll get used to it. Well, it turns out I was right. And how do I know I'm right? Well, Plasma 6 is getting a major redesign to how its edit mode functions. This is work primarily coming from Marco Martin in two separate patch sets. Zoom out when going in edit mode, this is done to Plasma Desktop, and another one on Plasma Workspace. He also made a blog post about this over on his own blog, which got posted over onto Planet KDE, and also Nate Graham talked about it in a recent edition of This Week in KDE. Now, seeing as though a lot of other things are changing with 6.1, it didn't get its own section heading, but I do think this is a really big and really important change being made. Now, for anyone unaware, how does edit mode currently work? So if we right-click on the desktop or right-click on the panel, this will take us into edit mode, and it looks like this. Right now, I've got edit mode on the panel, so I'm seeing the panel settings, but if we click off of that, this is how it normally looks. We have this bar along the top for things like adding widgets, adding panels, configuring our desktop wallpaper, changing the global theme, and we can go and add widgets around to things, we can go and move them around, we can resize them, and it works relatively well. Once you get used to it, it's totally fine. It's not great, but it's functional and fine. And this right here is going to be the new edit mode. Clicks the button, and it zooms out the entire desktop. One of the issues with the current edit mode is if you're someone who heavily makes use of the desktop zoom feature, you need this for accessibility, you just want to have zoom, whatever reason that you need to use it. If you go into edit mode and you are zoomed in, if you're not edit mode on the panel, so you edit mode like this, it can be very difficult to know that you're currently in edit mode. You've got to go pan up to the top and see, okay, the bar is here. Now by having it so when you go into edit mode, there is this little bit of motion here, it very clearly indicates that something on the desktop has changed. And if you do miss that motion, now because we have these blurred edges around the side, there is a lot more that you can pan to get a visual cue that something has changed. But there is more to this than just accessibility. One of the big issues with the panel is if you're messing around with the widgets, it can be very easy to get a widget stuck into your panel. So say I want to drag this clock, for example. If I get it a bit too close to this, it's going to get stuck in the bar, and you can't just drag this out. The way you remove it is go into edit mode on the panel, and then you can remove it. I don't even know. Oh, it went down here. Okay, whatever. Now, because the panel is very clearly distinct from the rest of the desktop, if you are dragging a widget into the panel, you are very explicitly doing that. And I know, if you're familiar with Plasma, this is really easy to avoid doing. But it is a beginner trap, and this completely eliminates it. Let's continue. Here he clicks Add Widgets. Now, it is going to take a bit to load because this is a development version, all of that stuff, but it opens outside of the desktop. Now, let's look at Add Widgets in its current form. It doesn't work consistently, so if I click a widget like this one, and then I drag it, that closes it, okay? But if I drag a widget out, this is gonna stay open, and we cannot put anything behind it because we just cannot see. So we have to go and click close, and then we're good. That's really annoying, and that's not how it should work. Now it's outside of the desktop, so that's just, once again, not a problem anymore. This might be less of an issue if when you dragged a widget out, it did automatically close. But then you still have the issue of every time that you want to make a new widget, you have to go click open and then close it and open and close it and open and close it. And that's just annoying. If it just stays open until you close it, that's probably a better way to handle it. Moving on from widgets, next up we have the panel settings. So he's going to click on the bar over here, and once again, the settings appear outside of the desktop, floating in this space. But did you notice how he opened the settings? Because the way he opened it is not like the way it currently works. Let's watch that one more time. He clicks on the bar, Not a specific location, just on the bar. Let's have a look at how it's currently done. So if we are currently in edit mode, there are two ways to get into panel edit mode. Firstly, we can right click on the bar and click exit edit mode. This is a broken label and they know it's broken and was going to be fixed in 6.1 anyway. And that opens up the panel settings. The other option is clicking this little button down in the corner here, and that opens it up as well. Now though, and this is something I pointed out in one of my earlier videos, it makes way more sense to just be able to click on the bar and it opens the settings. This is a really big change. However, as much as I like the zoom, this is starting to become a problem if you use, say, a 13-inch display. The desktop is getting a little bit small, and it might start becoming an issue for certain users, especially users who might be using higher resolution displays, or users who just don't have that great of a sight. I think something that should be looked into is possibly redesigning these panel settings and the widget settings and things like that, so they better fit the interface that we're working with now, because this is just the current UI being used, just glued onto this new setup. I don't think it's inherently bad, and I don't think it's something that desperately needs to be worked on, but it definitely is worth considering. Now, if you're going to ask me, what should you do? That's a tougher question to answer. I don't really know. Maybe you could make it 2 columns instead of 3. That would definitely allow you to have less zoom. Maybe have less padding around the sides, just to make the desktop not as small. But I'm not 100% sure how this could be better improved. Now, the next thing being shown is positioning the panel. This works the exact same way. There's nothing different here. The only difference is when you do go and move the panel, it is going to move the panel settings over as well, and it does change where the desktop is positioned on the screen. You also might have noticed it flicker a little bit there. Again, this is a development version. It's still being developed. That's why it's a development version. So expect it to be smoother in the actual release. And regarding repositioning, if you go from floating panel to not floating panel, the desktop is going to move there as well. Basically, anything that causes a new interface to appear or causes a current interface to move is going to reposition where things are located on the desktop. I didn't spot this until literally 3 seconds ago. One more thing that is new. So if you go and look right here, now there is a done button. If you click that, it will take you out of the panel settings. It will take you out of the entire edit mode. Right now, there isn't a done button on the panel settings. We get a delete button, and that's about it. This is obviously just the very start, and a lot more can be done here. And some ideas already are kind of being floated around. Nothing super concrete that is going to happen, but at least worth considering. This is from David Edmondson. I really like the concept. Having an editor where a giant window takes up view space on the area you're editing is problematic. It also allows in future for a drag to delete plasmoid feature at some point in the future using the space off the desktop. So what he's pointing out there is you could have something in the future where if you want to delete a widget, instead of clicking the widget and then clicking delete, you could grab the widget and then drag it into some of this empty space, automatically doing that. To be very clear, in its current state, that is not possible and may need a lot of additional work to become possible, but I think it would be really cool. Now, there are some criticisms, or maybe just ideas I would like to float around as well. So, now that we do have all of this empty space around the side, does it make sense for this bar here to be attached to the desktop? Or would it make more sense for this to be separate from the desktop and appear along the top? Because in its current state, as the desktop moves around, that bar is constantly moving around as well. And again, for accessibility, that can be a bit of an annoyance. Now, obviously, you can have your panel along the top as well. So in that case, you would have this bar right at the top, and then a bit of padding, and then your panel just underneath. But if that bar isn't moved, I think using this top space for adding an additional bar might also be a good idea as well, because this bar is getting a little bit full. Maybe removing things like the wallpaper and global themes could make sense. Maybe removing the display configuration could make sense. But assuming those don't get removed, if you wanted to add something new, like a save layout and load layout and things like that, it's going to get a little bit tight. Now, there is one more thing I want to say about the zoom. I've also suggested in the past having some sort of confirmation dialogue, and then, if you don't confirm, the ability to revert everything. This would obviously mean having an undo and redo system as well. By having the zoom here, it makes it very visually clear that you're in a mode that is separate from the regular desktop mode. In the current edit mode, like, the visual difference is obviously there, but it is relatively minor. Here, there is absolutely no way to miss it. When you enter edit mode, you have very clearly entered edit mode. I do think there is maybe an argument to be made that things are now moving around too much. When you open up the widgets, open up the panel settings, or open up anything, it all just shifts around, and if you are someone who is sensitive to that kind of movement, again, if you are zoomed in, it might be difficult to track things down. Like, none of this stuff is, it's inherently good or it's inherently bad. There are trade-offs here, but I do think that what we have now is considerably better than what is available there in regular Plasma 6. But what do you think? Do you think it's an improvement? Do you think it's worse? Do you think that anything needed to change in the first place? I would love to know. So if you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Libera Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and hopefully you like it, because I certainly do.
Something like this.